Alright, hey guys, how's it going? I'm back with another Destiny 2 video. This one's going to be covering the new armor sets for Season of the Witch. I'll be going most in-depth with Warlock, but I'll be covering Titan and Hunter as well. When you take a look at these sets, I think most people will obviously gravitate to the helmets. It seems like that's where the most work has been put into for all three of the sets. And with Warlock, their helmet is very emblematic of Savathun's likeness, you know, her visage. You've got the same crown here, and you've got the skull underneath. I do like how tall the crown is. I like that it goes, you know, past the screen border here. It's just that tall. My only downside with this piece is this sort of membrane that goes over the skull. It's kind of, I don't know if it's webbing or like a cocoon. Just something over the skull. And it looks worse here when you're zoomed in to the skull. There's a lot of things that, you know, are very bright and colorful and take away from the skull itself. But when you zoom out, it's not that bad, but it's always there, it's always present. And I think it just kind of takes away from the skull's visage. I think it would be more cool if the membrane was gone and it was just the skull itself. I think it'd be more stand out and it would be less obscured. This shade very well though. With all three of these pieces, you can tell that they kind of like a hard piece and then the skull piece. And with most shaders, they differentiate, but with some, I'm not really sure what causes it. They just shade exactly the same. So you can see here, like with these two, they're obviously different. But then something like this, you know, it takes only one color from the shader, which does suck. But I don't know, if you wanted a full black helmet here, you could. Going on to the gloves. These are just nice, simple leather gloves that go up to the second knuckle there on the fingers, so you'll see them in first person. But they are cut off there, which, you know, is a unique look. I don't think we have gauntlets that cut off that deep onto the fingers like that. And just a cool look. They take the texture of shaders, which is neat, so you can get this kind of ribbed look, or Transcendental Ambition, you have this hexagon pattern. It's nice. If you don't have the Starfarer's gloves, it's a good replacement for that. Next we have the chest piece. I think this might be my least favorite out of any of the pieces for any of the classes, but for sure for Warlock it's my least favorite. I'm not a fan of this. Kind of looks like snowballs on the shoulders. It's a really weird, this kind of puffy piece. I would have much preferred if it was this slope here and continued this line. But for the rest of the set, I do like this kind of layering here on the collar. You got this cool popped collar here with these spikes. You got this little jewel there, and then this handkerchief, and these kind of metals going around. And you got this really cool moth pattern going around the whole piece. And it does shade really well too. And then you have this nice bone waistband thing. Moving on to the legs, you'll see this a lot more with the Hunter, but this is kind of this chitin look from something like Morrowind. And at least with the base shader for these, the bone here, the kind of surfaces that are supposed to be hard, kind of look more like foam, like a cosplayer made this, than actual bone. If you shade it though, that it does usually fix it, makes it look a lot harder. The bond, it's a nice heavy, you know, looks like it's very weighty bond, and it takes a lot of that kind of style that a lot of the Throne World has. You see this kind of decoration very often in that. It's just a nice, cool, kind of coiled piece of heavy metal you can have on your arm if you prefer not to wear a hologram or something that glows. The whole set overall, I think, shades really well. You can do a lot of cool looks with it. I did make a set real quick using just the helmet and using bits of Trials and the Swarmer legs to make this very Tomb King-esque look that I'm a big fan of. It's very Egyptian looking, you know, ruler. Going on to Titan, which has my favorite armor piece of all 3 classes, the helmet. I'm a huge fan of this style. I've seen a couple games and, you know, characters do this in media. This, just the mouth being shown and then the top half being covered, kind of like a reverse face mask, you know, like an eye mask. I think this helmet is just very intimidating. I really like the mouth here especially, which is what I think is missing a bit with the Warlocks, with that membrane being pulled over it. And Titan doesn't have the issue of their bone material looking soft. I think it has to do with just the shapes look very much less organic, and it has this gold inlay that I think makes it just appear much harder than the other classes. And I think that's very apparent on the gauntlets here. You have these giant, you know, kind of plates of bone here, inlaid with this really cool gold insignia on both shoulders. And then here is kind of that softer bone that looks, you know, like foam. And they also have really cool finger plating here as well, these kind of claw bits. The chest piece, again, is all kind of hard bone, nothing that looks too soft except kind of like here at the arms. You have, again, like with Warlock, this cool popped collar and this kind of crown of spikes around the piece. Their legs, all kind of the classes have the same-ish legs. You have the softer bone here, and then Titans has this kind of like boot sleeve pulled all the way up over it, kind of to hide it, because you can definitely see that they're very chunky, so there's definitely pieces of armor underneath. You just got this kind of cloth covering it. And then for their mark, you have this cool moth-like texture, like the Warlock's robes, and then you got the bone plating around the waist with the gold inlays as well. Hunters, my least favorite overall. I think that really has to do with just the helmet, I think is the worst of the 3. I don't really know what kind of hive creature they were going for here, because I don't think any have like a face mask here covering it. I think the hive are very how do I put it? Their aesthetic has a lot of, I think, mouths incorporated in it. A lot of like the Titans or the Knights have, you know, that big block on their head, but you can always see the mouth, and all of them have the mouths. The Thrall, you don't have eyes yet, but they do have the mouths. I think that's just missing with the Hunter, with Hive being very, you know, mouth focused. I think you're missing that here, having, you know, not a crooked smile or, you know, a very angry looking sneer, I think is missing for this piece. Their arms, as compared to Titans, you can see just look a lot softer and like more like I don't know, like cartilage rather than bone. With any shader, you know, that fixes up and it looks a lot harder. I think it's most emblematic here with the or most, you know, most apparent here with the chest. I don't know, this whole piece just looks kind of like foam until you shade it. The legs, pretty similar to the Titans. You have the same kind of boot thing pulled over armor here. It just looks like you don't have as much armoring. They do have these kind of toe spikes there. And their cape has the cloth, or the moth, you know, cloth pattern. You kind of have these 2 tiny wings here on the back. And then you got this kind of crown here with some spikes. And then this kind of necklace with this ruffle handkerchief look, which is pretty cool. Yeah. I think if I had to rate them, I think Titans is definitely the coolest looking, followed by Warlocks, which I think is a pretty, I'd say, lackluster set overall, save for the helmet. And then I think Hunter doesn't have anything too stand out. I think the mark was missed with the helmet. I think they already have helmets that kind of look like that. And I don't know, if you look at it, your first thought isn't Hive, which I think you can very easily tell with the Warlock here, it's Hive, like a wizard or witch or Savathun. The Titans is very much like a knight, but I don't know what Hunters was supposed to be. This just doesn't look very Hivey, except for the 3 eyes. That's the only way you could tell. Yeah, that's gonna do it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed watching. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.